Ever since Bloodborne released in 2015 as a PS4 exclusive, players have been begging for a PC port. If you're watching this video, you know this already. And I hate to be the one to tell you this, but an official port, it's never going to happen. We've been through this before with Demon's Souls, and we all know how that turned out. But despite its exclusivity, Demon's Souls can be played on PC today, and quite well in fact, through the PS3 emulator RPCS3. And while PS4 emulation has been in development for years, it has notoriously struggled to get off the ground. In fact, only as of this month would I consider it good enough to consider realistically pursuing as an end user. All of the Bloodborne footage you're currently watching was rendered purely through PC via a specialty fork of ShadPS4, designed to optimize the rendering of Bloodborne as an individual title, and I can verify that as of today, you can successfully emulate all of Bloodborne from beginning to end fully on PC. No PlayStation, no PS Plus, no game streaming, no gimmicks. It can be a bit complicated to set up the first time, so if that interests you, stick around and I'll show you how to do it, as well as the potential issues to look out for in the process. It's finally time. This is Bloodborne on PC. Alright, straight out of the gate, in order to follow along with this video, you are going to need to have two files that I legally cannot provide to you. The first is the .package file for the 1.0 Game of the Year edition of Bloodborne, ripped from its disk, and the second is the .package file for the 1.09 update for Bloodborne. The PS4 stores a game's original game data and the latest update data as two separate files, and by extension, this is the same way ShadPS4 is expecting to receive the game you want it to emulate. Regardless of whether or not you actually care about the changes made in the 1.09 update, many of the patches and mods we'll be installing to optimize performance require the update to function, so you will need both of these files no matter what. The legal method of acquiring these is to rip both from a PS4 with custom firmware installed and a copy of Bloodborne purchased authentically. But let's not kid ourselves. You and I both know how you will actually be getting these files. The downloads for these are constantly being put online and taken down soon after, so I'm not being cheeky by holding out on where to get them. Any link I could provide would immediately be outdated by the time this video goes live anyway. If you have any experience with emulating games on PC, I'm sure you're no stranger to the difficulty in tracking down certain ROMs or ISOs. In the case of Bloodborne, the Game of the Year 1.0 base game should be a .package file that is around 30 gigabytes, and the 1.09 update should be a .package file that is around 170 megabytes. So regardless of how the host may have named them, you can verify that you have the right two files based on their size. And as always, use discretion when downloading strange files from the internet. You will never have to run an exe to download a file. Once you have these two on your system, I can help you more directly. Next, you will need a compressed file manager to open the files we downloaded in this video. If you don't have one already, 7zip.org is a great place to start. It's free, lightweight, and can manage zips, RARs, and 7z files all in one, but you don't have to use 7zip if there's something else you prefer. To start off, we need to actually download ShadPS4, and there's a few ways to go about this. The first method I'm going to show is the simpler of the two, and if you take this route, ShadPS4 will manage its own updates afterward. The site we want to go to is github.com/shadps4-emu. Then click the ShadPS4 link in the upper left box to go to the repository for the emulator itself, and then click on Releases on the sidebar on the right. As of this video's filming, version 0.4.1 is not out yet, but there is a nightly pre-release build of it, so that's what I'll be using to demonstrate setup. You should download the most recent build on this page, whatever it might be. That link will take you to this page, where you scroll down to the bottom and choose the version for your specific platform. If multiple options are available, always choose the Qt option, as this will have a graphical interface instead of just being a command line. I'll be running this on Windows, so I'm choosing Win64-Qt. The file you will get from GitHub will be a compressed folder, which you should extract before proceeding further. ShadPS4 doesn't actually install itself. It exists as a folder of smaller files with an exe inside, assuming you're doing this on Windows, and you open the emulator by just running this exe. Again, if you're on Windows, you may get a security warning the first time you try to run it, but you can bypass this screen by clicking More Info and then Run anyway. When ShadPS4 opens for the first time, it will ask you to specify a location in storage to install games, and a location to install DLC. It doesn't matter where these two are, but you do need to remember what you set them as. In my case, I'm going to set up ShadPS4 to do everything within Documents/ROMs, which is the folder I specify all emulators on my computer to work within. Again, you don't have to use this folder specifically, but you do have to remember whatever you set yours to be. We will be going into that directory multiple times in this video to make changes. Now the main interface of ShadPS4 will open up, and it's time to install our Bloodborne.package files. To do that, click File, Install Packages, and browse for the Bloodborne Game of the Year 1.0 package, the one that's around 30 gigs. After clicking OK, ShadPS4 will ask us to confirm the location the game will be extracted to, which should be the same directory that you specified earlier. Click OK, and the .package file will begin to be extracted into thousands of smaller files that can be processed by the emulator. This can take a very long time, so I'm going to skip ahead till after it's complete, but be aware that it's completely normal for this bar to be moving very slowly. When the extraction finishes, click OK and you should see Bloodborne listed in ShadPS4's UI, and it should display as version 1.0 since we haven't yet installed the 1.09 update. If you right-click Bloodborne and open Cheats/Patches, ShadPS4 can search either its own online repository or the PS4 custom firmware repository called Goldhen for add-ons, but as you can see, if we try to search for patches right now, it will find nothing. That's because the patches that exist for Bloodborne are only for the 1.09 update, which is why the 1.09 package file is a requirement to proceed. To install it, we follow the same steps as before. Click File, Install Packages, and this time browse for the 1.09 update file. When you select it, you will get a pop-up that says Patch Detected, along with a prompt to update the currently installed game from 1.0 to 1.09. If you don't see this, you may either have a corrupt file or an update file for a different region, which means it's time for you to return to the 7 Seas and get sailing once again. Now Bloodborne will display as version 1.09 in ShadPS4's UI, and if we return to the Cheats/Patches menu by right-clicking, there will be a ton of options in the Patches menu, with the ones provided by the ShadPS4 repository having more options than the ones provided by Goldhen. This is where you will check on or off features in an attempt to improve the game's performance on your system. Bloodborne is 1080p by default, but you can use patches to lower the resolution to make the game easier to run, or raise the resolution if you own a supercomputer. You can also disable graphical anomalies like chromatic aberration and motion blur to both slightly improve performance while rendering a cleaner image, or even turn on the 60 FPS patch by Lance McDonald, but be aware that ShadPS4's performance is extremely inconsistent at this early stage. It's very unlikely that your PC will be able to maintain 60 FPS, and this patch may actually do more harm than good for your performance, but it doesn't hurt to try. Feel free to experiment with all of these patches and find the best setup for your individual hardware. When you're done, click the Save button at the bottom, and you can then close this menu. Next, we need to adjust the settings of ShadPS4 itself. As of right now, because the emulator is still in early access, there aren't many options available. It currently does not have the ability to remap controllers or to emulate networking between players, though I suspect both of these features will be coming in the future. Speaking of updates, if you'd like to have ShadPS4 automatically update to the latest version, first select the update channel you prefer, and then click the checkbox underneath. Release means that you'll be using more outdated versions of the emulator, but ones that are tested to be more stable. And Nightly means that you will be using newer, more experimental versions of the emulator, which may or may not be stable. As of right now, both versions crash a ton, so I don't think there's much benefit to not being on Nightly, but in the future as ShadPS4 gains new features and becomes more stable, Release may be the better option. Also feel free to enable the feature to have ShadPS4 operate as a PS4 Pro if you like. This makes no difference as Bloodborne is not a PS4 Pro optimized game anyway, but if you're planning on also running other games in ShadPS4, this might make a difference for you. Click Apply when you're done, and then proceed to the next tab. This is where you would normally bind controller inputs, but as I said earlier, ShadPS4 does not currently have custom inputs yet. It does support USB controllers, but it will default to the first one it detects, with no real way for you to change it at this time. Though for what it's worth, I used a PS5 controller connected through a USB-C cable to record all my footage, and it worked just fine, straight out of the box. On the next tab, you can specify the GPU you want ShadPS4 to utilize, and this should always be the most powerful option in your system. Running this emulator with any decent performance whatsoever requires some very powerful hardware. You're going to want the best you can realistically afford, and also for everything else in your computer to be closed so nothing is running in the background. If your performance is still so low in your system that the game is unplayable, try patching down to a lower resolution like 720p or even 480p. And speaking of resolution, the width and height options to the right have nothing to do with the in-game resolution. This is simply the size of the window ShadPS4 will open when you begin running the game, and the internal game resolution will then stretch to fill this window. Feel free to enter anything here that looks good for your specific monitor. It shouldn't heavily impact performance the same way internal resolution patches do. V-blank divider should always be set to 1 right now, and doesn't need changing. This is the last tab of settings that we need to alter, so when you're done, click Apply and then Save. We can now finally launch the game for the first time, so click Bloodborne within the UI, and then click the play symbol to begin emulation. Once we're in game, you'll have to use a controller to interact with the emulator, and as I said before, networking is currently unsupported, so we'll be offline only for now. After selecting New Game, the opening cutscene will play correctly as normal, and then we'll be sent to character creation where, oh, that's new. So this is the part where I need to explain that the current version of ShadPS4 has all sorts of graphical bugs. You should expect some things to render incorrectly throughout the game. Character creation as a whole is bugged in the current version of the emulator, so we'll have no choice but to proceed using the default in-game character for Bloodborne, Cillian Murphy. Look, I'm sorry, you're going to have to play Bloodborne as Oppenheimer. Trust me, he's not happy about it either. When we get control of the game, we get up off the examination table, and our character immediately spazzes out and the emulator crashes. That's good. So what happened there is that Steam is running in the background, and trying to map the USB controller to serve as a keyboard and mouse because it doesn't think we have a game open, which is doubling our inputs in ShadPS4. I quit out of Steam and restart the emulator, and this time our character moves the way he should, but now there's this gross, long, black line coming out of our character's eye. This is a graphical glitch known as a vertex explosion, and is caused by the bug character creation not rendering our face correctly, and is something we can address a bit later. For now, we continue ahead to the first floor of the clinic to fight the wolf, and the emulator crashed again. Okay, maybe we have a problem. These crashes are caused by particle graphical effects like blood and smoke that ShadPS4 can't properly render at this time, which means anytime we hit anything or get hit, it's going to cause a crash. Being unable to render blood would obviously make Bloodborne completely unplayable, and it has been for some time, until now. Rather than waiting for ShadPS4 to become compatible with Bloodborne, what if we just forced Bloodborne to become compatible with ShadPS4? That was the thinking of a ton of developers on Nexus mods, and by downloading specific modified game files, we can both eliminate almost all crashes and improve the game's frame rate and performance at the same time. First, go to nexusmods.com, change the search drop-down from mods to games, and search Bloodborne. All of the mods for this game modify or replace individual extracted files ShadPS4 made from the Bloodborne package files we gave it, meaning you can download any of these mods and install them by simply dragging and dropping. Switch to the popular All-Time tab, and I'll show you which ones to download. These first two are basically mandatory. The Bloodborne Visual Tweaks mod by FromSoftServe, great name by the way, will remove a lot of supplementary graphics like background elements, grass, and debris from the game to significantly boost the game's FPS and allow it to run much more stably on the current version of ShadPS4. As of now, the latest version is still FPS Boost 1.0, but I've had great results with it and highly recommend it. Once that's downloaded, go back to the popular page and now download the SFXR Visual FX Restoration mod by Xenobite and Gazoo. This mod will replace the graphical effects that crash ShadPS4 with custom ones that ShadPS4 can support. If you've been following along with this video and have the standard nightly version of ShadPS4, you should download the version under optional files listed as for non-Tessellation users. As of today, it better reflects Bloodborne's graphical effects than the version at the top of the page, at least on the vanilla version of ShadPS4, but I'll get into that a bit later. After downloading this one, return back to the popular mods page so we can grab two more. Next, download the Vertex Explosion Fix by Rainmaker V2. This prevents strange graphical anomalies with our character's face by removing in-game character creation, but as I said earlier, it's bugged in ShadPS4 anyway, so it's not like we're losing out on anything by enabling this. We're fine to download the version at the top of the page that says it's for testing. It does its job extremely well. Finally, after returning to the popular mods page for the final time, download the RAM Spike Workaround by Kioski. This mod disables cloth physics, but massively improves the game's overall frame rate within ShadPS4. Frame times that dip and spike wildly are the most challenging thing about playing Bloodborne on PC at this current time, so any mod that attempts to get the unstable frame rate under control is worth installing. If you can't handle the visual jank of having no cloth physics whatsoever, there is an alternative version that only disables some of them, but I've found that there are plenty of armor sets that look just fine with them fully disabled. The performance benefit here truly is massive if you can tolerate it. Now, as for how to actually install the mods, each creator handles things a bit differently, but essentially all you have to do is open the downloaded folder for a given mod, copy the folder inside, and paste it on top of its matching folder name within the location the Bloodborne.package files were extracted. In this case, the folder this mod uses is DVD root PS4, so we copy that, then navigate to the location ShadPS4 extracted Bloodborne. If you remember, in my case I told it to extract to documents/ROMs, so when I go there, I find a new folder named CUSA followed by some numbers. This is the Bloodborne folder. Inside that, the very first thing you'll find is a folder named DVD root PS4, so we paste the mod folder there and confirm that we want to overwrite the files. Not every mod will use the DVD root PS4 folder though. For example, the mods to disable cloth physics only modifies a single game file. When we open that mod's downloaded folder, what's inside isn't named DVD root PS4, it's named MTD. So that means we have to find the MTD folder within Bloodborne's extracted files. In this case, it happens to be just inside the DVD root PS4 folder, so it's not hard to find, but you see how it works. As long as you match the folder name and overwrite the files, the mod will install correctly. While I'm repeating the process with our other mods, I should mention that some people will suggest making a backup of Bloodborne's extracted folder before replacing these files with modded ones in case something goes wrong, but I genuinely don't think this is necessary. As long as you have the original Bloodborne 1.0 package file and the 1.09 update package file, you can delete the CUSA folder and then have ShadPS4 extract the game files over again to get clean, unmodified copies. Save data for games is stored in the ShadPS4 folder, not the extracted files folder, so you won't even lose your save data if you have to start the process over again. With all these modded files installed, Bloodborne will be much more stable overall, and we see that immediately upon getting back in game. The Bloodborne superfans watching will immediately notice that the lighting of the clinic doors seems a bit off, and that some of the breakable debris from the environment is missing. Those are changes made by the Visual Tweaks mod, which boosts FPS by removing some of the more unnecessary and overly taxing graphical elements of the game. Now that we're back with the Wolf, we can test combat and verify that rendering blood effects no longer crashes the game thanks to the Visual FX Restoration mod. At this point, nothing is stopping you from playing through the full game this way with no other changes necessary. And I hope that one day ShadPS4 becomes so efficient and so accurate straight out of the box that the game just works, like Todd Howard.
Who's laughing now?
Depending on when you're watching this video and trying this out for yourself, you may find that none of this was necessary and that you're having a great experience with the game unmodded. Or, you could be having the same issues I've been describing, and in fact, even with these mods, you may be noticing from the footage that things still seem a bit off. The most obvious example being that the glowing yellowish icon designating an item drop simply doesn't exist. The Visual Effects Restoration mod we installed tried to provide a workaround for this by adding a white point light to showcase that there's an item to be picked up, and while this sorta works, it's clearly not the way the game's supposed to look. If this doesn't bother you, I would encourage you to stay on the normal ShadPS4 nightly release train and have the emulator auto-update so that you get fixes and optimizations in real time as they release. However, if you're impatient, like me, and demand an authentic Bloodborne experience on PC right now, then get comfortable, because we're just getting started. In hugely oversimplified terms, in order to render effects like glowing item icons, Bloodborne makes use of a computer graphic optimization method called Tessellation, which the standard version of ShadPS4 does not fully emulate correctly as of right now, and as a result, they appear invisible. To fix this, a GitHub user named Baggins183 created a fork specifically for Bloodborne to fix this one issue, when combined with a specific version of the Visual FX mod. Because it's a standalone fork of ShadPS4, it has to be installed from scratch, it isn't getting any updates, and it's not even hosted on GitHub anymore. But I do still have a copy of it. Now, this is very much a temporary solution that is only worth considering right now at this brief moment in time, and will be outdated the moment ShadPS4 fixes the issue internally. But if you also aren't seeing item icons in your game at whatever point in the future you're watching this video, then this is a way to get there. I'm hosting an old backup of the Tessellation fork on my Google Drive that you can find linked in the description below. And yes, that does mean we're starting from scratch. Downloading the mod, extracting the folder, specifying ShadPS4's game extraction locations, and changing its settings as needed. As for getting the game to run, If you've already extracted the Bloodborne.package files using vanilla ShadPS4 before switching to the Tessellation fork, and specified both to extract to the same location, this version of the emulator will immediately detect Bloodborne, and you won't have to import the package files over again, which is a nice convenience. Also worth noting is that all the mods we installed earlier modified the extracted Bloodborne game files, not anything related to the emulator. So regardless of what particular version of ShadPS4 you start, all of the mods we installed earlier are still installed. The only mod change we have to make is that the Tessellation fork requires a specific version of the Visual FX mod to function. So we need to return to Nexus Mods one final time, click on the Visual FX mod by Xenobite and Gazu, and this time download the one at the top that specifies as being for the Tessellation branch standalone. Once that's been downloaded, we'll replace the DVD root PS4 folder, same as before, and now, when we run Bloodborne, we got item icons. What you're seeing now is the best and most stable version of Bloodborne on PC as it exists at the time of uploading this video. It is my hope that by the time you watch this, ShadPS4 has improved so much that none of these mods are necessary, that using a specific emulator fork isn't necessary, and that it's as click to play as any other emulator on PC. But if that's not the case for you, know that you can follow every step I showed in this video to get the result you're seeing currently on screen. I also want to point out that even this is still not perfect. In fact, there are several major issues that have yet to be resolved that I want to make you aware of. Firstly, the game can lag hard when it loads in new areas. Sometimes it means you have to wait a bit after loading screens for the frame rate to catch up. That's not a big deal. But when you hit a loading zone in the middle of an area surrounded by enemies, it can be devastating. You often lose control of your character, hitboxes stop working correctly, and you can rocket off in a random direction or even clip through objects. What's worse, when the emulator finally recovers from this, I found that it sometimes bugs and thinks that your character is constantly sprinting, meaning that pressing circle always results in a jump instead of a roll or dash. If you aren't aware, jumps in Souls games don't have iframes, so this completely kills your ability to dodge until you quit out and load back in. If this becomes a recurring problem for you, check out the Jump on L3 mod from Nexus Mods, which does exactly what it says. It makes jumping only possible by clicking in the left stick instead of using circle, meaning that your rolls and dodges can never be broken by a temporarily low frame rate. There are also cutscenes that sometimes fail to load and have to be skipped in order to avoid a soft lock, and some graphical effects that don't quite work right. The spell A Call Beyond is currently completely invisible, but can still be dodged if you know the proper timing. And things like fog walls sometimes bug out and don't render as they should, although this issue is purely cosmetic. Most interestingly to me, the snow in Canehurst is invisible, which I would have sworn was simply part of the ground's texture and not a visual effect applied on top of it. The more you know, I guess. Other than these minor complaints, the game seems to be relatively stable. I do still occasionally have hard crashes after playing for several hours straight, and depending on what you're doing at the time, this can be, unfortunate, let's call it. But let's not kid ourselves here. We're playing Bloodborne on PC at 60 FPS. I'm ecstatic. Alright, there's one more thing I should show you how to do, since it was part of the thumbnail. ShadPS4 doesn't have any networking features at this time, as I said earlier. But if you'd like to add Bloodborne to your Steam library so that it's listed along with your other games, you can do so by opening Steam, clicking Add a Game at the bottom left corner, and then Add a non-Steam game. Once this menu opens, click Browse at the bottom, and select the location of your ShadPS4 exe. Once it's added, right-click the emulator in your library and select Properties to open this window, where you can even rename it Bloodborne, if you like. Either way, make sure to select Controller on the sidebar and set for the game to start with Steam input disabled, that way you don't have duplicated inputs like at the beginning of the video. I hope this guide was helpful to you and that you managed to get it running as well on your system as I have on mine. Once that happens, consider leaving a sub or a like. Also, if you're new here, you should know this kind of video is not what I normally do. This channel primarily exists to showcase glitches, so obviously I had to try out Bloodborne's in ShadPS4, and I'm happy to report that everything that can be done on console also works just fine on PC. So once you have your game up and running, you might want to check out this video for a refresher on how to break Bloodborne wide open. If you've never played Bloodborne at all, you might be more interested in my 2015 video walkthrough series, First Blood, which is designed to get new players up to speed as quickly as possible. You can find it on my second channel, Phobia VODs, along with previous live streams and other stuff that doesn't exactly fit on Phobia. I'm currently trying to get that channel to 1,000 subscribers so I can monetize it, so any help you can offer in that regard would be highly appreciated. I'll put links to all that in the description. Thanks for watching, and welcome to Yarnum. Happy hunting!